In a small town, a wealthy man named Matthew had two wives. His first wife, Elizabeth, was kind-hearted and loving. She had only one child, a daughter named Grace, whom she raised to be respectful, humble, and full of love. Matthew's second wife, Sophia, was the opposite, manipulative and jealous. She had 3 children and resented Elizabeth for being favored by Matthew. Though Elizabeth never treated her badly, Sophia secretly despised her and her daughter. Years passed, and Grace grew into a stunning, graceful young woman. She married Daniel, a rich and handsome businessman who loved her deeply. Their wedding was a grand affair, filled with joy, laughter, and happiness. Daniel adored Grace, showering her with gifts, attention, and unwavering support. Her mother, Elizabeth, was overjoyed to see her daughter blessed with such a loving husband. But happiness is not always everlasting. One fateful evening, Grace received a devastating call from her father, Matthew. His voice trembled as he said, "Your mother is gone." Tears filled Grace's eyes. She dropped her phone, collapsing in grief. The pain of losing her mother was unbearable. 3 years into their marriage, Grace remained childless. Though Daniel reassured her that he loved her regardless, she could feel the pressure from society. She prayed, fasted, and visited doctors, but no solution came. Her heart ached whenever she saw children playing. One evening, with tears streaming down her face, Grace knelt before Daniel. "Marry my stepsister, Rachel," she pleaded. "She will give you the child I cannot." Daniel was shocked. "No, Grace. You are my wife, and I love you." But Grace insisted, saying she couldn't bear to deprive him of children. Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. At first, everything seemed perfect. Rachel moved into their home, and Grace welcomed her with open arms. They laughed together, ate together, and bonded like sisters. Grace even encouraged Rachel to spend time with Daniel, believing she had done the right thing. A few months later, Rachel became pregnant. Everything changed. She no longer treated Grace like a sister. Instead, she mocked her for being barren. One evening, as Grace served her food, Rachel threw the plate at her and sneered. "A barren woman like you has no right to serve me." Daniel was furious at Rachel's behavior, but Grace begged him to remain patient. Daniel's love for Grace never faded. Though Rachel carried his child, his heart remained with his first wife. This infuriated Rachel, who wanted him all to herself. "Your God is useless," she taunted Grace. "He cannot even give you a child." But Grace did not respond. She only prayed harder. One morning, Grace woke up feeling different. She went to the hospital and took a test. She was pregnant. Her joy knew no bounds. With excitement, she rushed home to tell Daniel. But instead of rejoicing, he accused her. "You must have slept with another man," he shouted. "This child isn't mine." Grace was heartbroken. The husband she loved did not believe her. A few days later, Rachel gave birth to a baby girl. She was furious. "You bewitched me. I was supposed to have a son," she screamed at Grace. Twisting the truth, she convinced Daniel that Grace had cursed her. Under Rachel's manipulation, Daniel made a terrible decision. He threw Grace out of the house. Alone and devastated, Grace had nowhere to go. She went to a friend's house for help, but her friend's husband refused. Instead, her friend handed her some money and whispered, "I wish I could help more." With nowhere else to turn, Grace decided to rent a small room. But on her way, she was attacked by thieves. They stole everything she had and left her unconscious. Meanwhile, back in the village, Sophia, Grace's stepmother, sat talking to Matthew, her husband. Suddenly, a thunderbolt struck her. She screamed, clutching her chest. In that moment, she began confessing all her wicked deeds. "I killed Elizabeth out of jealousy. I made Grace barren. I poisoned her fate." As soon as she finished speaking, she collapsed and died. That same night, as Rachel welcomed Daniel home, she suddenly screamed in terror. Her body went stiff, her mouth opened involuntarily, and she began confessing. "I charmed you, Daniel. I controlled you. I made you hate Grace. The baby isn't yours. It belongs to another man." Daniel was horrified. The woman he had trusted had deceived him all along. The next morning, Daniel took Rachel back to her parents. He faced them and said, Your daughter is a liar and a fraud. I am done with her." Rachel was disgraced. Her own father shook his head in shame. Daniel rushed to the hospital, where Grace lay, recovering. "Forgive me," he cried, holding her hand. "I was blind, but I see now. Please come home." Grace, with her kind heart, forgave him. Months later, Grace gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he held his son. "God is great," he whispered. Despite all she had endured, Grace finally received her blessing. Grace, Daniel, and their baby stood together, bathed in the golden light of a new dawn. Their story was proof that faith triumphs over evil, and love conquers all. The end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more dramatic love stories. See you in the next one.